Our wonderful honored teammate's dad, who you met before. I'd like to invite Darius Crandall to come on up one more time, please.
Wow. Thanks again, everyone. From the corporate world, I know, especially around bonus season, a big part of that is managing expectations. So I'll manage everyone's expectations, and I probably won't hold it together for the whole thing. So know that going into this. Whenever I talk about running, I'm usually surrounded by coworkers that think running 26 miles is absolutely insane. And when I tell them stories about a training run, and I went out for a short run last night, it was 10 miles, and they're like, I've never run 10 miles, ever. And so to be surrounded by a bunch of people as crazy as I am, I feel a little bit of comfort in that. So thank you. And try to keep this as brief as possible. I know my kids are clamoring to get out and trick or treat today, so as soon as this is over, as soon as the candy comes in. We thanked this group of people before, but your friends and family and everybody that tolerates the lunacy that goes into training for 15 or 18 weeks or whatever your program is. I know you're no fun in social events, you have to eat weird things, and you've got no time for certain stuff. So thank everybody one more time that puts up with this. So why am I here? I'm a distance runner, and I had applied 7 times through the open lottery system to get into the New York Marathon. And I ran it back in 2011, and at that time I was the 3-in-1 program, or get shot down 3 times and you get in on the last. And they did away with that. So this year I got in through the open lottery system, which is a 1 in a million shot, I think, as we all know. And so I had my own ticket to run this year, and I knew I wanted to do something special back in 2011 when I ran. I wanted to do team training, and I had torn a calf muscle in June. And I knew Jackson's story was compelling, but I didn't want to share it and get a lot of people on board with fundraising and then end up not being able to run the race. So I unfortunately did not raise money for team training that year. I did, however, run the marathon, and at that time Jackson was in the middle of treatment and obviously ran for far different reasons. And I run this year because it's Jackson's 5-year milestone. September was 5 years since he was diagnosed, and by mathematical reasons, I guess when the leukemia cells are low enough, we call it remission, and so he was in remission right away the first month. So September was 5 years of him being in remission. So I figured what's better than raise money for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I got on the phone and I called up, and I ended up speaking with Laura, and Laura's been terrific, and we forged a great friendship a couple months ago, and she's been absolutely outstanding, and she's helped me get through all this and everything involved. And ironically, why would I decide for team training and for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society? Jackson, being born with Down syndrome and all the educational challenges we have, he's got more causes than I care to choose from. And so ironically, in all this, I've seen in the literature that some of the LLS funding has gone to Dr. Carroll. And Dr. Carroll happens to specialize to some degree in children or adults in the relationships between leukemia and Down syndrome. And so when we were seeking a second opinion, and as you heard earlier, it isn't just the cancer that's the problem, it's the treatment. The sooner you can get done with the treatment, the less collateral damage we can cause. So the sooner we felt comfortable ending Jackson's chemo, the better and better his odds would be for the long term. So we reached out to Dr. Carroll, and he actually advised us on some of what was going on in Europe and the shortening of protocols, and with the trisomy 21 or a Down syndrome diagnosis along with it, there are changes that he was aware of. And so through his guidance, we were able to shorten the time Jackson was being treated. And so whether or not that had a part in Jackson's success, I can't say, but I know it certainly didn't cause us any harm. So in an odd way, I'm kind of contributing to a cause that I ultimately benefited from. So anybody who has raised money for team training, thank you, because we were the recipients. And to coin a phrase from Hair Club for Men, I'm not just the president, I'm also a client. That's kind of that's what we were with Jackson and Dr. Carroll. So thank you. So what makes Jackson's story probably a little bit different, obviously, is the twist with Down syndrome. And so for us, it's always been a two-pronged or a double-edged sword that as soon as he beat cancer, and which was an enormous accomplishment, obviously, the third chromosome never goes away. So as soon as he was done with cancer, and those challenges pose something that arguably sometimes seem more difficult than what goes into fighting cancer. With cancer, you kind of get on the merry-go-round, and there's structured protocols, and you just you kind of go with it, obviously with some intervention, but there's a rule book out there. With special needs and Down syndrome, that doesn't necessarily exist. So in that, I just want to say that there is so much that goes on behind the scenes with a special needs child, and none of which would be possible without Jack's mother, Kim, and his two amazing sisters, Paige and Madison. It's getting Jackson's socks and shoes on and getting him off to the school bus and all those things that require the strength and patience and discipline that far exceeds what it takes to train for a marathon. So that needs to be said. So what can I pass on to you for tomorrow that would make you think about Jackson's story? I want to share some experiences that I probably have had in his treatment that are unique, and the way I view perspective as a result of that. When you have a child with Down syndrome, for a short time you feel like, and Kim and I didn't know that he was going to be born with Down syndrome. And right away, it's anger, it's lack of faith, it's you question everything. And the first night that we were in the hospital with him, we were in the pediatric intensive care unit. We had spent most of the afternoon being consulted with doctors, and right away we started induction. And so I was at the PICU, the pediatric intensive care unit, that night, and Kim had gone home to grab some clothes, and we knew we were settling in for the long haul. And I was on the late shift, and I'm sitting there watching Jackson sleeping, and his tubes and everything hooked up to him, and trying to get my head around what's happening, and obviously feeling incredibly sorry for myself and him and this situation. And in the bay next to us, there was next to Jackson, there was I would say, 9 or 10-month-old child that crashed. And all the doctors responded, and they worked on him for hours, and ultimately didn't make it. And so all of a sudden, I'm watching through the cracks in the curtains, and they pull the covers over this child, and I watch family come in for hours to say goodbye and grieve. And I realized in just a short 12 hours, of not even 12 hours of Jackson having cancer, that I don't have it so bad. And looking just one bay next door, I realized he's alive today, and that's every day he's alive is a victory. So that was the mindset that I started off his leukemia treatment on. And there were countless examples of that along the way. Jackson entered a school, the Morgan Center on Long Island, which is dedicated just to preschool kids with cancer. And 3 of Jackson's classmates did not survive. So it was so close to home. And one of those funerals I remember being at, and the child was being buried in pajamas that Jackson had in his dresser drawer back at home. And if that's not hitting close to home, then nothing is. And I remember a sunny afternoon, with all the treatment, we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and you often share rooms with other patients, and you try to provide as much privacy as you possibly can, and as much privacy as a curtain being drawn will allow. And I remember one sunny afternoon sitting there, and Jackson was in for something relatively routine, and I heard the family consulting with hospice care and end of care preparation for their child, and just thinking, how is that possible? How do you plan on bringing your child home for the end? And what I take away from these three examples is that you never have to look very far to realize that somebody's got it worse than you. And as we heard mentioned earlier, when you're out there running and struggling, someone's struggling just as hard as you are, and you will get through it. And I know this is heavy, and the opposite of heavy, I guess, is that there is a positive to this. And the positive is that the money that we're raising today and what we're doing and everything you guys are putting into tomorrow will hopefully eliminate these stories for people in the future. And we'll have less of that, less stories like this to tell. So anybody who's raised money for Team in Training and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, thank you for that. One thing that you learn in having a child with special needs is that you change your expectations, and you change what it means to have what you call a benchmark and what is a victory. And you picture all the typical things and the stereotypical life that any child would have, and those things all go out the window when you realize your child is born with Down syndrome. And an example of that I just had 2 weeks ago. I stopped by Jackson's school to pick him up, and his teacher comes running down the hallway for me and was so excited to tell me that Jackson had, she found a breakthrough. She was busting at the seams, and he was very close to writing the capital J for his name. And Jackson has never scribbled or written or done anything with intent that was supposed to look like the letter. So to hear that he was close to breaking through with some form of speech, and he's got a fair amount of sign language, and he does have some verbal that we do communicate, but just to think that he's on the cusp of possibly being able to write and understand what that means, that is just an amazing accomplishment. And I broke down into tears, and I've been fortunate enough to be selected by Foot Locker to be one of the 5 borough contestants. I'm running for Brooklyn, and so we were off to some big media event, and Jackson's the star of that show as well, and I realized how quaint it is that the real victory is that capital J. And so to wrap up, whether you're training for a marathon or you're trying to get through that last couple of miles tomorrow coming down Fifth Avenue, and it is incredibly tough, and you're looking for a reason to get through it and to push through it, just think about Jackson, and that he handles the way he handles himself, and that whether he's fighting cancer or trying to spell his name, he handles it in the exact same way, and that's with a beautiful smile on his face and just a relentless tenacity to not give up in his way. So that's what I've learned from having Jackson in my life, and if I can pass along any of that to you, and if he can inspire you in any of the ways that he's inspired me, then it's my honor to share his story. So with that, I want to wish all of you guys good luck tomorrow, and thank you for doing what you're doing. Good luck.